Hello, my name is Ken Dreesen, and this is one of my YouTube channels called The Wisco Kid. And today I'm going to talk about a project I've been working on for a long time. It's a part of a thing I call direct participatory democracy, and I've been working on that by 1998, I believe. I first became interested in it and studying it and trying to write about it. And now the project has morphed or grown into a thing I call the New West. And what that means is that we can no longer call ourselves the United States of America for several reasons. One, the founding fathers in all their glory were slave holders and landlords that practiced genocide against the native peoples and found it in their interest to sell European working class immigrants off to the international bankers. So now if that weren't bad enough, then you could say, well, we can dispose of the United States, just call ourselves Americans. And that is even worse yet, because there's other theories about it, but it's pretty well proven that America is named after Amerigo Vespucci. Yeah, Amerigo Vespucci, I guess you would more properly say something like that anyway. And there's a letter available, in the translation of a letter available, where he's explaining to Your Majesty, his boss, or whatever, that he was really looking for gold, but he didn't really find any gold, so in order to help pay for the trip, he brought, I think it was like 209 slaves back to Europe and sold them in Spain. So that is not something that modern civilized democratic or even republic nation would want to be called. So after thinking about the name for a while, yeah, and maybe we'll come up with some other name, but we are in the Western Hemisphere, and it is the North and South America comprise by far the largest continent in the Western Hemisphere. And I figure that since it has been called the United States of America for the last 240 years about, that returning to calling this land the West would actually be something new. So I have a website that explains that the New West is going to form a totally new government, and parts of that government would be like, or the changes would be like, we will still need some kind of an executive. A government will need a lead person, even if the government will actually be run by the people, by a referendum and people's right to vote on law and appropriation. We still, because of human history and organization, that the concept of an alpha leader is not beyond us. We aren't beyond that yet. Even if we should say in these times that it is the Constitution that leads us. It's the Constitution that rules us, not even the president. It is the Constitution that we must be loyal to. And even in the military, that is what they swear allegiance to, the Constitution and to the president. So it's kind of mixed, a mix and match thing. So if the president is a criminal, some people will still be loyal to that president, even if he violates the constitutional rights of others. Yeah, and that has definitely been the case when it comes to slavery, and even like 75 years or so right before the Civil War, an African American brought a case before the Supreme Court, the Dred Scott case, and he said that the Constitution said all men are created equal. I may be African American, but I'm a man, and slavery is unconstitutional. And the white privileged Supreme Court justices at the time shot him down. You know, it's so terrible, the history, and it goes on and on like that. Even through the civil rights battles of the 60s, there is still a perception where some people consider themselves more privileged than others. And it's not totally in race, because I haven't been privileged. I worked as a tradesman most of my life, and through different things like being busted for marijuana several times and other things that happen into my life, I'm 60, and all the land, I owned some land for a while, and had a house that I built, and I have nothing except a beautiful basement in my 80-year-old parents' home that will probably disappear when they pass on. So if somebody wants to say I'm white and privileged, be my guest, but it is not further from the truth. So back to this New West. I'm trying to work it both as a realistic plan for the future of our country, and also, since most people are trained and ingrained so much and do have pride in the United States, even with what I said, even if it was started by European royal landlords, slave owners who practiced genocide against the natives and sold the European working class immigrants off to the international bankers, they still love the country they're from. It's just like, it's part of human psychology that that's the way that it is. So that's why part of my work I'm going to publish in a fictional basis, like in a novel that's going to have a soundtrack, and maybe make it for TV or for internet movie, and it could even be a Broadway play or something. But you can see that I'm very serious about it. It's just that I don't think the culture is ready for such a drastic change. There's going to be people that are going to hold on to the United States of America, screaming and crying and wah wah wah, and it's and I'm a communist, or I'm an atheist, anarchist, pagan. Yeah, well, maybe I am, but I also believe in, in egalitarian principles, the principles in the preamble of the Constitution, that all men and all women are created equal. And yes, some of us are more talented than others, and should be able to persevere and maybe become a little wealthy, but born into wealth has been a reality in this United States for so long that there really is nothing that a person from a working class could invent or do or change or do anything to become part of this wealthy class. And mark my words, Donald Trump, a lot of Republicans and a lot of these Republican sheeple say he is a self-made man. No. His dad gave him $1 million when he graduated from high school, I believe. And then besides that, he became like a owner of their, the largest, not Wall Street, Manhattan real estate firm at the time. So that is not a self-made man, Don, or any of your worshipers. Forget it. And there's a lot of other people the same, in the same category, that, you know, one of even Bill Gates did do quite well for himself, but his father was involved in, I believe, real estate and investment firms and things like that. So when Bill Gates was doing magnificent things with computers and programming from the time when he was a young man, and he is very intelligent, it is the truth that some other people in whatever, a garage or a group of young men, developed DOS, which is called Disk Operating System, which Bill Gates bought for $50,000. Well, if somebody said there's a pot of gold buried down there out in the woods that's worth $1 million or $1 billion, and all I need is $50,000 to dig it out, I'm not gonna get it. You know, nobody's gonna say, okay, here's a loan for $50,000 or something. So, you know, maybe Bill Gates actually did a lot of work and is pretty talented, but compared to the average European or African American or Native American or person, he had a lot of advantages. So back to the New West, I think that we need big changes in our government. And like I said, the decisions, the big decisions will be made by the people through national referendum and through voting on the law and appropriation that is decided by the government. So instead of a president, which you can see right now, and even some people would say with Obama and with Trump, this executive orders and too much, for one person to have that much power is not indicative of a democratic, socialist, or nation, or whatever you want to call it, of a republic. So instead of a president, we'll call the highest office in the land the secretary at large. Or if I thought of another word for it, but I can't remember it for the life of me right now. But I don't want to call it a secretary general, because that's too much warmongering. And then there will be the undersecretaries. Like, it can be just similar to the way it is now, except there will be like a secretary of education, a secretary of defense, and Secretary of the Environment or whatever of what is now the President's cabinet. Only these secretaries will have elected positions also. So that instead of just voting for a president every 4 years, you're going to have to vote for several people that will fill those important positions. And then the Congress, that's pretty goofed up with, they call it the People's House or whatever, but there ain't no people about it. It takes millions of dollars to get in there, and once they're in there, they just play the stock market and do whatever suits the machine and them, and makes money for them, and they're like, act like, you know, elite superheroes, like they somehow deserve their position and they're going to get as much as they can for themselves. They're just glorified insider stock traders made legal by this government. So instead of the two houses, the Senate and the Congress, there'll be one house, the People's House, and the leaders of the districts that are going to be similar to a congressional district or a representatives district now, that position is going to be called a steward, because they are like stewards of the environment, stewards of the will of the people. They're not there to say, oh, I represent you and I'll do what the hell I want, I got the votes, shut up. They'll be responsible for collecting and tabulating the votes of whoever decides they want to take part in any election or any bill before the House. So if nobody votes, you know, it's something, if they're going to make a new post office or make it a historic monument or some darn thing, and nobody pays attention or cares, then the steward would have the one vote. But at the same time, if there is some other legislation before them, every person in the district has a right to vote. And the vote on the law and appropriation that the majority takes will be selected by the steward. And there's a lot more to it than that. And I hope to like bring the novel part of it out and write about different characters involved in this transformation to the New West. And in ending this video right now, I hope that when somebody is talking about our country, that we could just call it the West. And I want to make that popularize that, because, like, you know, what I've been saying, how the United States is something that I don't think many people really cherish or want to be considered a nation of slave owners that practice genocide against the native people and sell the rest of us off or whatever. So please think about it, and like I say, I welcome you, and I would thank every one of you with all my heart and belief that we should begin to call this nation the New West. Thank you.